What up, cucks? It's your boy up in this piece, and it's Tuesday, which can only mean one thing, and that is that it's time for our NXT review. Let's make this a regular thing. Maybe we'll even review AEW. What do you think of them apples? Now, when I started watching NXT today, I haven't really seen NXT in a long time. I didn't really pay much attention, so if I get anything wrong, I apologize. It's been a long day. But the first thing that I wanted to point out was, are we watching NXT or are we watching NOT? Because this show is not entertaining. All right, let's get to it. First up, the first thing of note that happens is a women's North American title qualifier. I didn't even know they were doing this, but now there's a women's mid-card title in NXT. As if that's not low enough. It's like, if you have the women's North American title, you may as well just not even be there, right? It's like, nobody wants this title. Who could possibly want this jobber title? There's like 5 women's titles now, right? Let's see. The 2 women's championship, the NXT women's title, the tag team titles, and now this garbage, right? So it's like, you know, at this point, it has no bearing, right? Especially if there's no analog, like there's no women's intercontinental title. That would be a big deal just because of the name of the intercontinental title. But nevertheless, let's get to it. They don't even have a creative name for it, right? It's like they just call it the women's North American title. Like it's just like, basically there's like the men's jobber title, and now we have the women's jobber. Just call it what it is. The women's jobber title up in this piece. You know what I'm saying? Sexy Red is in attendance tonight, and she reveals herself to be the host of the next, whatever, NXT pay-per-view, right? Now, people kept asking me what I think about Sexy Red, but I haven't watched NXT in a while, so I was like, that's kind of random. Like, why are people asking me about this rapper, right? And I will say this, you know, Sexy Red, in my opinion, is a lot like Orange Cassidy or Rikishi, in that you either get it or you don't. Now, Orange Cassidy and Rikishi, I don't particularly like, but I get it, right? I get why people like them. They're different in their own way. Rikishi has a fat ass and thinks he's a black guy. He thinks he's a good rapper, and his moves involve his ass. Okay, so like, I get it. I get why Vince McMahon liked them. I get why people want to see a fat man shaking his ass while dancing, and like the worst dancing I've ever seen in my life, with like little arm movements he does when he does like a shitty version of the robot. It's just atrocious. But I put Sexy Red in that same category, like the same category as Soulja Boy, right? The Hater is a big rap guy, and when I was in college, Soulja Boy was becoming big. Like when I was in late high school, early college, and a lot of people were like, "This guy's ruining hip hop," but I got it, right? I understood what he's trying to do. He's trying to do what everyone's trying to do now, right? Make money off the internet and kind of put himself over, right? Sexy Red is like, it's a work, right? She's in on it. You know, the whole character of Sexy Red, which I personally appreciate because I like characters, right? Just like Tupac was like a pussy from drama class and he pretended he was a thug. Sexy Red pretends she's like this flagrant whore, right? But that's kind of like what sells, right? So I appreciate Sexy Red. Does she have a spot in wrestling? I'm not so sure, but she is an entertainer with character, right? Obviously not very PG, but I think she brings something to the table. You know, it's like she is like somewhat mainstream. You know, she's definitely more famous than anyone else on this show. So there you have it. I can't fully hate her, but anyways, this video is not about Sexy Red. This video is about NXT. So once we learn all that bullshit, we have Michin, also known as Mia Yim, versus Tatum Paxley, who's one of these broads that, like, I don't really know. You know what I mean? Like, she's not someone that I would recognize. Like, I watched it today, I'm like, oh, is that, like, Roxanne Perez? I have no idea what these girls look like. But Michin wins the match. This is, like, a qualifier for the jobber title. So, like, I guess it's expected that we don't know who the fuck these people are. Next, we have the very underrated Ridge Holland, who, in my opinion, should have gotten a huge push after the Brawling Brutes separated. It should have just led to him versus Sheamus and him beating Sheamus clean. This guy is just built like a fucking horse, right? He's not that tall, which I think works to his benefit because he's so stocky, right? He's so stocky and believable that, like, I think being taller would make him look less intimidating, right? He just looks like a Brawling Brute. Like, I automatically thought that the entire Brawling Brutes gimmick was going to be centered around Ridge Holland eventually becoming somebody, right? But anyways, he destroys Riley Osborne, who's like the fourth guy in Chase U, which is a complete disaster. I hate Chase U. I don't get it at all. This is one of those things that I don't get. They're like a college for some reason, but why? Whatever, anyways, we have one of the best tag teams in the world, the Good Brothers, Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson versus Edris Enofe and Malik Blade. Now, Edris Enofe's finishing move is called the Idris Elbow, right? Which sounds like Idris Elba, which I think is a brilliant name for a move. So automatically, Idris gets a few points in my book. I think this kid has something. I'm not saying he's going to be a star, but it's kind of like, nowadays they hire a bunch of Idris Enofe type guys, right? A bunch of young black guys, right? That they're hoping to make, like, WWE is still hoping to make their one black star because they failed miserably on that, likely due to racism, but who knows, right? But it's like the same thing with like the Latino wrestlers, right? They hire like 20 of them, and then none of them have any time to shine, right? But I would put Idris Enofe in the same category that I put Cruz del Toro. Like, I think he's the one, but nobody wants to give him the push, right? He's gonna be like the last, to get a push, but he's the one who deserves it. Like I think, for example, Idris Enofe just has the more mannerisms and more charisma than, let's say, Cedric Alexander or even other wrestlers that are comparable to him that aren't black, so they're not gonna like get that path. They might get another bullshit path like Nathan Frazier, right? So I believe in Idris Enofe. I don't like Luke Gallows and Carl Anderson. I think they're boring, and to be honest, they always have been, especially Luke Gallows. So I never understood what people saw in Luke Gallows. Like, he's just like a jobber, But anyways, it is what it is. Obviously, Luke Gallows and Anderson win because, like, they're at the end of the day, they're like a main roster tag team that's been put here. But I do like Idris Enofe. I hope he gets the next black guy push, if you will. And now for all of you that are saying, that's racist, you know exactly what I'm talking about. Don't fuck around, you know what I'm saying? Like, WWE is, I don't want to say a racist company, but they're a racial company, right? So, like, they'll take all the Latinos and put them together. They'll take, the Street Profits and put them with Lashley because they're all black, right? They'll take all the good guys and make them friends, all the bad guys and make them friends, right? So, I think that, like, if you're a black wrestler in WWE, you really have essentially a difficult road ahead of you. Now, if you're Lashley, that's basically it. If you're Lashley and you're like, an outstanding level of a wrestler, right, then you might become WWE champion. But otherwise, it's just very difficult, So, like, I get it. I get the Kofi Mania thing, but it's like, like, obviously, Edris Enofe, like, his ceiling is Kofi Kingston. Like, he's not going to be, like, obviously the next Lashley. I mean, look at him. Lashley's, like, 3 times his size. But you understand what I'm getting at, right? This is the unfortunate reality, right? Just like if you're, like, a white, smaller guy, your ceiling is, like, basically AJ Styles, Seth Rollins, right? But as you can see, the ceiling, if you're, like, on the white side of the coin, is a little bit higher than if you're on the black side of the coin, right? That's a fact. You can't deny that. Like, there's no reason to believe that Seth Rollins is better in the ring than Cedric Alexander. Like, I have no evidence to support this, right? He just gets the push because he's going to get opportunities like being put in the Shield, whereas Edris Enofe might be in the 15th, iteration of, like, the Street Profits or fucking, whatever the group that MVP led was, right? Like, that's just how it is. So that's why I'm judging him based on that. It's not me, motherfuckers. It's WWE. I wish that it was more of a meritocracy where great wrestlers, like, I always bring up Cedric Alexander as an example because I seldom see him botch. Shelton Benjamin's another one, right? Obviously, like, a personal favorite of mine, right? There's a lot of, like, wrestlers that are talented, and it's not just black wrestlers, like white wrestlers, Hispanic wrestlers that get bogged down with, like, bullshit. They don't get a gimmick. They're just kind of there, right? Because WWE doesn't want to, like, really push them to be stars, right? It's also, like, primarily it's their size, but nevertheless, you get my point, right? Next up, Jordynne Grace from TNA is revealed to be the next challenger for Roxanne's Perez title at the pay-per-view. This is cool. Interpromotional stuff is interesting. Jordynne Grace, in my opinion, is perfect for this role because, number one, she's the TNA champion, but also she just looks like a beast, right? She just looks like a credible threat to anybody. She would obviously destroy Roxanne Perez in a real fight. Like, she would destroy Roxanne Perez, Tatum Paxley, and the other 15 girls that look exactly like them. But it is what it is. She's obviously going to lose. But I thought it was a really cool moment, right? Jordynne Grace, this is the best she's ever looked. Like, she's, like, lean and just strong looking, right? She's not, like, as fat as she used to be, in my opinion. Next up, we have another women's match. Lola Vice versus Ariana Grace, right? Jordynne Grace, Ariana Grace. What's the difference? You know what I'm saying? Lola Vice wins. She's getting a huge push. I don't quite see what the big deal is for her. I get it. She's supposed to be this, like, sexy Latina that can kick your ass. But I'm not really, like, into it. I don't see what she offers that's any different from Shayna Baszler, which ironically is going to be her opponent. It's the same fucking thing. It's just like a girl with an MMA background. Like, I don't know why they keep hiring these people. Just hire actors, motherfuckers. But anyways, whatever. It is what it is. Then we have Lexis King jobbing out to Dante Chen. I'm just hoping this is going to lead to some sort of huge Lexis King push. I'm a big Lexis King guy. I always was, even in AEW. Dante Chen, I mean, from what I've seen from Dante Chen over the years, like, he's not bad, right? But it's like, this guy gets no exposure, so nothing's going to come of this. So I give this segment like a 3 out of 10. I'll give it a 5 out of 10, actually, because Lexis King is just cool. But whatever, it is what it is. Next up, we have the Women's North American title qualifier. Another match in that bullshit. Kelani Jordan versus Ren Sinclair. Ren with a W. I don't care at all. Like, you could have tricked me into thinking that the other one is you know, that Ren is, you know, Kelani, and Kelani is Ren. So in this show, we've got Kelani Jordan, Jordan Grace, and Ariana Grace. Like, come up with different names, motherfucks. Who gives a shit? Jordan defeats Sinclair. Who gives a flying fuck, right? Then we've got Trick Williams and Javon Evans, who I like. I like this kid, but I like him only because he's super young, right? So it's like, this guy actually has a chance. Like, if he can stick around and not fuck up and become irrelevant and kind of get over, this guy has, like, insane potential because he's so young, right? But I mean, like, at the end of the day, like, it's too early to tell what his potential is going to be, because it's like he doesn't have the personality yet to do anything, right? Like, and as I've said earlier, even in this video, like, black wrestlers really have a hard road in wrestling, right? That's why I think some people are behind Trick Williams, but in my opinion, Trick Williams is not that dude. That dude was Velveteen Dream, but we all know how that went down. Anyways, Trick Williams and Javon Evans are wrestling Joe and Mark Coffey of Gallus, right? Gallus is, I mean, I like Gallus. I used to like Gallus a lot until I saw, like, Mark Coffey, which is their leader, right? He was in some multi-man match and he just looked small. I thought he was like, they were big dudes, but they're not, right? And when Mark Coffey was fatter back in the day in NXT UK, like, it just fit more. But now he's like, they both lost weight, so it's like he just looks like a small, like, nobody, right? Anyways, Trick and Javon beat Gallus, as one might expect. And then, what's her face? Lash Legend is her name? From the Metaphor comes out, and she basically just asks her love interest, Trick Williams, straight up, like, is he the one who attacked Oro Mensah and fucking Noam Dar? The lights go off for no reason, and out comes Ethan Page just blasting Trick Williams, right? Then he reveals that it was him all along, basically, right? And he just attacks Trick Williams a little bit more. He also pushes him into, he pushes Trick into Lash Legend, so that's kind of like more of an angle right there. Now, I personally don't think that Ethan Page is anything special, but I will say that he has potential. Now, the problem with Ethan Page is the problem with a lot of wrestlers, right? That, especially these NXT wrestlers. The problem is he's just old. Like, he's in his 30s. He's 34. It's like, you're starting this guy out. Like there's absolutely, for example, I'll put it to you this way. There's no chance that Ethan Page is going to have a better career than Bobby Roode, right? Bobby Roode is better than everyone that I just mentioned on this show, right? But despite that, Bobby Roode joined when he was like in his late 30s, right? Now, Ethan Page has a few years on Bobby Roode, even if you adjust for their debut. But nevertheless, it doesn't really, like, change much, right? He's in the same position. Like, at the end of the day, when Bobby Roode joined WWE, even though he was a little bit older, right, he also had, like, significantly more success. Like, Bobby Roode joined, what, like 8 years ago? He was like, let's just say he was 40 for the sake of math. So Ethan Page has like 6 years on him, right? Maybe a little bit less. But Bobby Roode was like a world champion and like a guy that people had pegged as being like the future of wrestling. He's always been in incredible shape. He's a good-looking guy. He's masculine. He had a gimmick. Ethan Page is going to have none of these things. Ethan Page has there's no reason to believe that Ethan Page is going to be more successful in WWE than he was in AEW, right? So these AEW guys that are coming into NXT, specifically Ethan Page, what's his name? Ty Dillinger. I forget his like name now. But Ty Dillinger, these guys, they're never going to make it, right? Like, they're not bad, but it's like, I mean, Ty Dillinger is a great example of someone who, you know, he just has, unfortunately, I hate to say this because I like him, you know, like, he just doesn't have much personality. He's kind of vanilla, right? But he has every other attribute. It's like, you would expect him to have been a huge success. The problem is, he just doesn't fall into the right bracket, right? He's like 6'2", 6'3" at least. He looks like a man. He's a good-looking guy. He's good in the ring, right? He has all the attributes except for that it factor, right? And the other problem with people like Shawn Spears, and I think with Ethan Page as well, but especially with Shawn Spears, is that when he debuted in WWE the first time around, right? Like, we're talking like 20 years ago at this point, right? When he debuted as Gavin Spears and he was a young guy, like, it was the wrong time for him to debut because back then, being 6'3" and 240 pounds, whatever the fuck, however big he is nothing because you have to go wrestle Batista and Cena and Edge and Snitsky, who all are either much bigger than you, much more charismatic than you, or in many cases, both, right? So it's like, it's the same thing with Ethan Page. He's just late to the party, right? Trick Williams, that's what people like him because he's a big, strong guy. He's got some charm. I mean, I don't think he's good at promos, but he can learn that, right? He has some capacity, right? In my opinion, he's just never going to step out of Carmelo's shoes, but whatever. We'll see. I hope I'm wrong. You know, I do like Trick Williams. I think he needs more moves, but I think he's overrated. And that's kind of the moral of the story, motherfuckers, and the moral of this episode. It's just a bunch of nobodies that are overrated, right? And it's like now NXT like feels the most like a developmental brand than it ever has, right? And I think that's the big problem. It's like there was a point where NXT was like legit, and they had some good wrestlers and stuff, but nowadays, like, let's look at the NXT Battleground card, right? First, we have the ladder match for the women's North American title. It's Sol Ruca, Lash Legend, Fallon Henley, Jada Parker, Michin, and Kehlani Jordan. Like, it's like none of these girls, like, do you give a fuck who is the first ever NXT Women's North American Championship champion? Nobody cares, right? Like, I don't give a shit if it's Sol Ruca or if it's Jada Parker or if it's Michin. It's not going to be, like, I think, I mean, if I had to guess, I'd say Lash Legend is just, I feel like they're more behind her than anybody else. But who the fuck knows, right? Then we've got Obafemi. Okay, like, I didn't like this guy, but now I have to adjust my calculus, right? It's like, he clearly is one of the better guys they have in NXT. Like, that can no longer be denied. Like, if someone were to say, who would you push, Hater? Obafemi or Trick Williams? Like, I'd have to say Obafemi. Like, he just looks more menacing. He's a big guy. He's athletic. And I think he has the same levels of charisma as Trick Williams. Trick Williams is over, but he's only over because of the booking. Like, he didn't get himself over like other people have. I don't think he's capable of it, right? Wesley and Joe Coffey. I mean, like, Wesley, him and Nash Carter, like, the Rascals were a great tag team, you know? Like, they fired Nash Carter, so now Wesley's just kind of there, and like, credit to him because he's getting it done, you know, despite the fact that he's gotten the ramming of a lifetime with him firing his partner who's also better than him. Like, he's carrying the ball. Like, well, I thought Wesley was gonna get fired like a few months after because what the fuck are we gonna do with this jobber, right? Joe Coffey, I mean, he's just not exciting. Like, there's nothing there that's interesting about Joe Coffey. Shayna Baszler versus Lola Vice, like, I could give a shit. I mean, I guess that's a little bit more exciting than the other matches. It's an underground match, whatever. Then Roxanne Perez versus Jordan Grace. That's exciting only because it's like a special attraction, right? Just because it's Jordan Grace. And then Nathan Frazier and Axiom, which are the throwaway tag team, against the OC for the titles. Like, I could give a shit. And it looks like, I mean, I don't know if they're going to do Trick versus fucking Ethan Page. I doubt it because it's like Ethan Page just debuted. But, I mean, you would expect, you know, Trick Williams to do something there, right? So at this point, it's like, this just feels like an indie fed. Like, none of these people are people that would ever get you to tune in, right? So, and part of that is also there's like 15 women in each show. So it's like, you know, you have to differentiate, right? The same way that I say, for example, Idris Enofe and Malik Blade as a tag team, there's no there's nothing to distinguish them from Nathan Frazier and Axiom, right? It's like, why are Nathan Frazier and Axiom the tag champs, but Idris Enofe and Malik Blade aren't, right? There's no reason. Like, it's not like one team is better than the other, right? They're the same fucking thing, you know? It's just, maybe it's what I was saying earlier, right? Maybe it's like, if you're Nathan Frazier, you get a little bit of a boost because you're a white guy and people might buy your t-shirt. I don't know, motherfuckers. Don't ask me. I don't work with their marketing department. But what I do know is that it's a bunch of bullshit. So with that being said, it's like, there's nothing to look forward to here. Same thing with like the OC, Gallows and Anderson. It's like, what are they? Like, what is their gimmick, right? What is their raison d'etre, as we say, right? What is their purpose of existing, right? They're just another tag team. You might as well just fire them and you know, put AOP there to do their job, save like a few $100,000 in salaries because it's like, you don't need both of these teams, right? That's kind of one of the problems with wrestling, is just everything is spread too thin. That being said, motherfucks, this was like, you know, for all things considered, now we have to like start adjusting our ratings again. I give this NXT episode like a 5 out of 10, only because of Jordynne Grace's presence. There was a debut. Again, not like a big deal, but it is a debut, and there is a story involved there. It's a very generic story, but a story nevertheless. And Sexy Red is bringing some like star power to this. And she was involved, like she like accompanied Trick Williams and Javon to their match, right? That was kind of nice. Like it's like she's not just there to like make an announcement. She kind of integrated herself into the show. So I give it a 5 out of 10 for that. But like this is not the NXT that like of a few years back, motherfuckers. This is like one of the worst NXTs ever been. And with that being said, go fuck yourselves.